Thank you. I need to ask a favor. I need a... Yes, like this? This one?
Kenyan police use tear gas to disperse protesters as the nation's election crisis deepens. Bringing the stories and struggles of refugees to the big screen. And in what some experts say could be a game changer, a luxury fashion house goes fur-free. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and a warm welcome to you. This is Africa 54. I'm Haiti Adams-Fitzpatrick, in for Vincent McCory. We begin in Kenya this evening, where the media reports 3 people have been shot and 2 killed and 2 others sustained injuries after anti-IEBC demos turned chaotic in Siaya and Migori on Friday. The 3 were shot after they allegedly attempted to storm a police station in Bondo, the hometown of National Super Alliance leader Raila Odinga. Now, police used tear gas to disperse protesters in the country's major cities. Kenya is in the grip of a standoff between the government and opposition leaders over a planned repeat presidential election. On Thursday, the Kenyan government announced a ban on demonstrations in Nairobi, Kisumu and Mombasa. The Interior Minister says protesters have damaged and looted property. The repeat presidential election is scheduled for October 26th. Now, the Supreme Court nullified the results of the August presidential poll, in which incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta beat Raila Odinga, citing irregularities. Odinga quit the race this week, saying the election board has failed to enact reforms which he says could ensure a free and fair election. Who will be the next president of Liberia? Well, that's still the big question tonight. Reuters news agency reports former soccer star George Weah has taken the lead in partial presidential election results. Now, the Electoral Commission says Weah is ahead in 11 of Liberia's 15 counties. This vote is meant to bring about the country's first democratic transfer of power in decades, but it's still too close to call. The National Election Commission's Jerome Kukoya has warned all parties to wait until all the votes have been counted.
Candidates and political parties should also be patient and await the official result and not rush to premature conclusions. The Commission is committed to the timely release of results, but this cannot be done at the expense of accuracy.
Now, the Liberty Party, however, wants election authorities to stop counting the votes, citing voting irregularities and fraud. Only one woman is vying for the presidency, while another woman, Jewel Howard Taylor, is the running mate of George Weah. Taylor is, of course, the ex-wife of former president and warlord Charles Taylor, who is serving a 50-year prison sentence for war crimes in connection with the conflict in neighboring Sierra Leone 2 decades ago. With 20 people running for the highest office, analysts do not believe anyone will win over 50% of the vote, forcing a runoff in November. Now, Liberians went to the polls to choose the successor to Nobel Peace Laureate Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was Africa's first female elected head of state. She's stepping down after serving 2 6-year terms. In South Africa, it's a bad start to the weekend for President Jacob Zuma. The Supreme Court of Appeal has upheld a High Court ruling to reinstate hundreds of corruption charges filed against him. Now, this means Zuma can face prosecution over almost 800 charges of corruption relating to a 1990s $2 billion arms deal. The South African president is accused of fraud, racketeering and money laundering. He's always insisted he's innocent, and charges were first brought against Zuma in 2005, but were dropped by state prosecutors in 2009. That paved the way for Zuma to run for president later that year, but then a High Court ruled that charges against Zuma should be reinstated. Zuma, of course, appealed against that ruling. The Supreme Court of Appeal has now rejected Zuma's application. We're told the latest court decision was unanimous. Now, you may not know much about her, but the president of Mauritius, Amina Gurib Fakim, is a scientist and a businesswoman, and she will be the only female head of state in Africa after Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf leaves office in January. VOA's Abdushakur Aboud sat with the president for this one-on-one interview.
Well, already highlight the fact that I'm an endangered species. No, but I think we need to make sure that the agenda is addressed.
Amina Gurib Fakim was referring to her role as the only female leader among the 54 African heads of state when Sirleaf leaves early next year. She has been president of the island nation of Mauritius with a population of 1.2 million, situated east of Madagascar, since being elected by the National Assembly in 2015. She said the need for more female leaders goes beyond just numbers. It's a matter of capitalizing on the talent of the entire population instead of just half of it.
You cannot have development if you cannot win a football match, for example, if you leave 52% of the team on the bench. So if we want to make a dent in many spheres, we need to take on board women intuition. We need to take on board women capacity, and we need to bring the women on board, because we bring in a different dimension to the thought process, to decision making.
Gurib Fakim is a biodiversity scientist with a doctorate in organic chemistry. She chairs the leadership group of the Coalition for African Research and Innovation, CARI, and visited Washington to lobby for scientific research in Africa during the Grand Challenges Summit organized by the Gates Foundation.
And the idea of CARI is to keep on building the infrastructure so that we provide the right ecosystem for African scientists who are on the continent and who are working in key areas of health, sustainable development, energy, water, all the issues which will help the African continent to, well, be successful on the sustainable development goals.
The Mauritian leader said that technology will drive some of this adaptation, pointing out that mobile phones are allowing herders to track weather patterns and markets for their livestock.
This mobile telephony and technology, they are very, very important tools to make a dent in the transmission of the appropriate data, the appropriate knowledge, and more importantly, get the women empowered in Africa, because we must not be coy about it to say that women feed Africa.
She recognizes that climate change and food insecurity are urgent problems in Africa, which is struggling with droughts and other weather-related disasters.
And it is also a given that if you improve by 1 or 2% in agricultural productivity, you will remove 40 to 50 million people out of absolute poverty. So we need to relook at this sector.
Speaking about one of the practice of some African leaders trying to change their constitutions so as to stay in power, Gurib Fakim says the real power is in the hands of the people.
I think, we always put a lot of importance on the politicians, but I think we have to tell people that the real power is with them. Every vote counts, and the choice of the leaders rests with us.
The Mauritian leader says she is new in politics but has translated a business experience into a blueprint of success in politics and calls for her African counterpart to invest in their people.
This is where we need to invest in new ideas, in new areas, in new pillars of the economy, but more importantly, invest in people.
Mauritius already has one of the strongest economies in Africa based on exports of sugar and textile, and a banking sector that draws in many foreign businesses that are attracted to the island's stable politics. Abdushakur Aboud, Voice of America, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover here. You can join the conversation on Facebook. The address there is Africa 54. And if you don't know, we are also streaming our show live on Facebook. So do check us out and share our show with your friends. Coming up, how one Washington festival is bringing the stories of refugees to the big screen. We're back in a moment.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Welcome back. South Africa and Nigeria are both economic powerhouses on the African continent, but these two countries are grappling with an education crisis. Their schools are among the worst in the world. Now, Google has granted education nonprofit Siyavula $1.5 million to provide free access to its online learning platforms for about 300,000 students in South Africa and Nigeria. So joining us now, live via Skype from Johannesburg, South Africa, is Yogo Dubois. He's from the nonprofit Siyavula. Yogo, welcome to Africa 54. Good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you so much.
South Africa and Nigeria are both experiencing a crisis in the education system, as we mentioned. How will $1.5 million from Google to your organization change that?
Oh, okay. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to be on set. So South Africa and Nigeria actually are benefiting from this Google.org grant, which is a philanthropic grant that we have received to enable 150,000 students in South Africa to access for free for next year our adaptive learning platform to practice mathematics and science. So the same thing is also being launched in Nigeria, where we will be delivering 6 textbooks for the last 6 years of high school in Nigeria, and also enable the students in Nigeria to be able to use our platform for next year.
So you provide an online learning platform, but you know, we know internet is not affordable for many South Africans or Nigerians for that matter. How do you plan to give students access to your online learning platform and make sure that not just an elite group of students get access, but really those kids who are truly disadvantaged and need it the most?
Yeah, but you see, given, for example, South Africa, we have 2 major networks in South Africa who enable students to access our platform free of internet, free of charge, internet free of charge. And we think that we are going to implement the same model in Nigeria. So basically, to access our platform, one needs just a device with a basic web browser. So not a very high-end smartphone, but the basic can be able to access our platform.
Very, very briefly, can you please tell us about Siyavula's #1MillionMaths challenge? I found this to be very interesting.
All right. 1 Million Math is a campaign that we launched in South Africa because we are entering the last term already. So we enable students to practice for free for the month of October and November until they write the exams. But it's also in the effort of recruiting the 150,000 students who will be enabled to use the platform next year. So it is very exciting, and we have a lot of engagement in the platform. And the same actually, the similar campaign is also planned to be launched in Nigeria, where we will do the same effort to recruit users there who will be beneficiaries of the grant of Google.org.
Well, I wish all of this stuff was around when I was a kid, because I was terrible at maths. Yogo Dubois from the education nonprofit Siyavula, speaking to us there from Cape Town, South Africa. Yoga, thank you very, very much for joining us. It said the purpose of a story is not to tell you what to think, but to give you something to think about. Well, that's what organizers of the Greater Washington Immigration Film Festival hope to do. The festival, now in its 4th year, showcases films that document the extraordinary stories and experiences of refugees who are seeking a better life in the West. Well, I sat down with Mary Harris. She's one of the organizers, and I asked her what's new and exciting this year.
We've joined with the International Cinema Series, which also occurs in Washington, D.C. this year, to really amplify and reach a larger audience. Our goal is both to entertain, to educate, and to inspire people to action. The films themselves are both documentaries, that often is what's in film festivals, but we have phenomenal feature films, dramas, comedies, and many shorts, including animated shorts this year. Limbo in particular, which is one of our longer shorts, it runs about a half hour. What happens once you arrive in Europe, and in particular in Italy, is you enter limbo.
They said to us, welcome to Italia.
It can be up to 2 years before you have any papers or you're allowed to do very much. The 2 filmmakers who filmed this and documented it really have captured that feeling of how one goes from relief as a refugee to hope, almost to despair in limbo.
They take you like an animal.
The unifying themes are the strength and determination and resilience of the refugees themselves.
You've lived in many parts of the world. What surprised you most about these films?
For some reason, because I live in the United States, I just assume that all the refugees are coming either to Germany or the United States. But what I've learned is that most refugees are being hosted by their neighboring countries. And in Africa, Kenya is one, Uganda is one, Senegal is one. More than 85% are hosted by their neighbors. And so we're looking at this thinking that we do a lot, and it's a drop in the bucket.
What do you tell people about why it is important for Americans to welcome refugees?
Imagine being forced from your home. No one plans to become a refugee. And that's a very poignant note of one of our films that was filmed in a Uganda refugee camp. It's called Do Not Come to Europe. And countries are closing their borders, but the fact is refugees are seeking safety. They're seeking just shelter in most cases. They haven't chosen to leave their home. They've been forced from their home, either by conflict or persecution, either for their beliefs or for their looks or for something. We're a huge country. We can welcome people who want or who need shelter.
And the Greater Washington Immigration Film Festival is free to the public and runs from October to December. You can go to their website for more information. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A big announcement from a luxury fashion house. Hold on to your outfits. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines.
In Kenya, police used tear gas to disperse rallies of opposition protesters in 3 main cities. The South African High Court rules that President Jacob Zuma can face prosecution for almost 800 charges of corruption filed against him. before he became president. In Liberia, ex-football star George Weah and Vice President Joseph Boakai take an early lead in presidential election results. In the DRC, opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi calls the delay of the presidential election by the country's electoral commission a declaration of war on the Congolese people.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
With Africa 54, welcome back. Here is what is trending. A former Australian factory line robot is embarking on a new career as a dancer. Baxter has been saved from a life of monotony, but he's not yet ready for the human world. Baxter is being taught these sensational moves by a choreographer. It's all part of research to prepare robots to live with humans at home by making them friendlier. Social robotics are still early in their evolution, but seeing how people react to them is vital to developing more intuitive machines. Baxter's next move will be meeting the public. That should be interesting. Well, next up, Gucci is the latest fashion house to eliminate animal fur from its collections, starting with the Spring-Summer 2018 season. The Humane Society, which supports the Fur-Free Alliance among fashion houses, says the announcement is, quote, a game changer and perhaps the biggest fur-free retailer announcement worldwide to date. The fashion house says it will auction off existing fur animal items with proceeds to benefit animal charities. Gucci joins other fur-free fashion houses, including Giorgio Armani, Hugo Boss, and Stella McCartney. And finally, squatting on the side of the road, eating with your mouth open, putting your elbow on the table, all accepted behavior in Chinese culture, believe it or not. But they are now frowned upon as bad manners in Western society. While Australian etiquette expert June Daly-Watkins has been educating mostly middle-class Chinese, and she's seen an exponential growth in demand for her classes in China in the past few years. Her 4-day crash course, currently priced at, wait for it, $5,400 per person, has expanded to 5 cities across the country, including the capital Beijing and Shanghai. On the agenda, table manners, how to stand and sit, even hug appropriately. And that is what is trending today. After visiting the diverse landscapes of Dinosaur National Monument once, National Parks traveler Mika Meyer knew he had to come back. In addition to the site's ancient land formations and dinosaur fossils, the massive park, which stretches across 2 states, is also home to a river canyon made up of unique rock formations. Well, Mika experienced them all and shared with VOA's Julie Tabo why the site is among his top 5 favorites.
Behind me in Dinosaur National Monument, you see some of the most diverse and expansive views of my entire journey so far.
After a year traveling to 160 national parks around the country, that landscape was just one of the reasons Mika Meyer was so enthralled by his latest parks adventure.
It was incredible. I have never seen a river canyon this close to massive valleys that were shifted upward that look like giant ski slopes of lush green grass that are also right next to white snow-capped mountains.
But the park, which spreads across the states of Utah and Colorado, is also home to a large number of dinosaur bones, many of which are still visible embedded in the rocks. Through a series of exhibits, visitors get to see and feel just how massive the giant animals were.
That would not feel good if that ripped into you.
They've found tons and tons of dinosaur bones that are now in museums from New York to D.C. to my hometown of Lincoln, Nebraska.
After his experiences on land, Mika returned to the park a couple of months later to see it from a different angle.
What really struck me the first time I came to Dinosaur National Monument was these impressive, unique rock features. And now to be able to see them up close from the water was incredible.
And there was a wide variety to explore.
The geology is getting particularly awesome. You can see these kind of pancake-like features in front of me.
This view is pretty epic.
These rock ripples were deposits of rock that were upturned and now make this curved shape that we see shooting up from the river to the sky.
There was also an added benefit to Mika's park adventure. start of his journey, he and his tour group were joined by an unlikely fellow traveler.
I noticed there was this little goose that was hanging out on the beach. And then we got in the boat and we started floating down the river, and this goose was swimming right up next to the boat. About 5 or 10 minutes later, the goose was still with us, and my buddy Tom jokingly said, "I think he's just going to come along for the journey. We should name him. Let's call him George."
George followed the group on water.
George does not want to be left behind.
On land.
George, you better pick up the pace. You're slowing us down.
And even settled in with them at their campsite.
It became very apparent that George the goose had attached himself to us, thought he was either one of our group or we were his new flock. Wherever we went, George the goose was going.
Right up until the very end.
Hey, Georgie.
Georgie's following us.
Dinosaur National Monument is now among Micah's top 5 favorite parks.
It really is a special place that seems to be a hidden gem and that I hope other people will get a chance to explore.
With or without a goose. Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
What a trip. And that is where we will leave it. Thank you so very much for being with us. To kickstart your weekend, we'll leave you with the sounds of Mali's Mamadou Diabate. This is Dakantigi. Enjoy the music. Have a great weekend.
Nafate juguyala, nafate koyala, jana fate juguyala, nafate koyala, jana fate juguyala, nafate koyala, jana fate juguyala, nafate koyala. Neru no te, neru no te, neru no te. Sidiki no te masala mami que yo sí sé hola. Secote, no baño ma yo sí sé bote. Dakantigi dakantesa, nakantigi nakante korobola, never dakale bolo. Kanajina, jatoko tigi la fialete, jawari tigi la fialete, fantankeni la fialete, hali president la fialete, alama vinke joni se tola. Secote, beni dakalero. Secote, opana bagasi di hima, dakantigi alalena. We are been for city hima, dakantigi alalena. We are been that city gila, dakantigi alalena. Oshima fenke city gila, dakantigi alalena. Jana fate juguyala, nafate koryala, jana fate juguyala, nafate koryala, jana fate juguyala, nafate koryala, jana fate juguyala.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate.
Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot on